Alright, so we have another tutorial today in the Abstract series, and we're looking at this explosion effect. And this is Abstracts 3. If you want to download the full version of this document, you can from the shop. It comes with Abstracts 4, and there's a link in the description below. But if not, we're going to go ahead and get started on creating a effect that's similar to this and kind of show you how it's done. The only thing you're going to need for this tutorial that's not included in Photoshop is a good dry brush or grunge brush, and I've got some links in the description below where you can download some good ones, so go there, and then you would import them into Photoshop by going to Window. You can go to Brush Presets, and then this icon here on the right hand side, which looks like a drop menu, you can go to Load Brushes. Is a quick easy way to get to it. When you load brushes, that's when you locate the ABR file, I think it is, and then you can load up your brushes and they will show up in the menu over here. Alright, so once you have those brushes loaded, come back and we'll get started. So let's go to a new document, File, New. Let's use the same size we've been using for the past few episodes, which is 1200 pixels tall by 1200 pixels wide at 72 ppi or dpi. So click OK, and let's get our canvas kind of dragged over and set up for this tutorial. Alright, so let's start with a radial gradient. Radial gradient, man. Okay, for the background, yeah, it's late. Okay. So for the foreground color, I've got a kind of a burnt orange chosen, and the RGB value for this is 1848532. And if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause and come back. These menus are on the screen, and there you go. So okay for the foreground color. The background color, let's choose almost like a deep purple color. So we're going to choose 58 for red, 16 for green, and blue will be 34. Press enter. We want to have the gradient tool chosen with foreground to background as the preset, and we want radial gradient as the variation, second one from the left up here. Alright, so where you start and stop this gradient is where the blast or explosion is going to originate from. So I'm going to have my explosion on the left hand side, so I'm going to drag out a gradient to the right here and do something like that. Let's go to a new layer, and let's go ahead and set our default colors. So that's going to be black for the foreground and white for the background. Alright, so now you want to go up to your lasso tool, and you want to have some feathering turned on. So I have feathering turned on at 25 pixels, and I have anti-alias checked. So we're going to do this a couple times. I'm going to go ahead and try to draw an explosion kind of splatter shape. Alright, I'm going to use my all-time favorite shortcut keystroke, which is Control-Delete, to fill that with the background color. I'm going to go to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. Okay, and you want to press Control F a couple of times to get a good, there we go. You want something kind of like that, where there's a little more of the white than there is the black, and the white has kind of this electrical feel to it. See how it kind of made this sharper edge here? That's what you want. So let's press Control D, or you can always go to Select, Deselect. Let's go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. You want to grab this rightmost slider and pull it almost to the halfway mark, but not quite, to kind of turn up those white values. Press OK. Let's set the color, or the layer blend mode to screen. Then let's go to Filter, Blur, Radial Blur. Alright, so the amount you want at 100, you want the blur method at zoom, and you want quality set at best. This is the point of where the zoom blur is going to start, alright, the radial blur. So as you can see, imagine this whole box is your 1200 by 1200 canvas, and where this starts, where this point is where the blur is going to start. So I'm going to have it just kind of right bottom left, a little bit from my my blur shape here, my explosion shape. So I'm going to press OK, and you're going to see that's going to kind of blur more towards the right. I'm going to press F or Control F 2 more times to blur that a little bit further, and it's going to kind of break it up a little bit. Control T, and let's hold Shift and scale this up pretty good, and then set it back to where our point is. You can keep kind of playing with this and set that blast up. Okay, make a new layer. You're going to do the same process again. So I've got my lasso tool selected. All right, draw kind of a splatter shape. Control delete to fill that with the background color. Filter, render, difference clouds. Control F a couple of times until we get something like that. Maybe let's press Control F a few more times. That looks kind of cool. It almost looks like lightning. All right, that's actually another way you can get lightning in Photoshop. Control D to deselect. Image, adjustments, levels. Rightmost slider, drag it into the left to boost those white areas a little more. And OK, set the color mode or blend mode to screen. Filter, render, filter blur, radial blur. And this time I'm going to leave the my point of where I want to start it there, because it's almost right on top of this shape, and I want this to blur outward. So I'm going to press OK. All right, press Control F a couple of times. Now let's scale this one up as well. So Control T is the shortcut for transform, and I'm holding Shift and Alt so I can scale from the center, and I want this point to almost line up with the other one. So this creates kind of a variation of the blast. In this original that I did, you'll see there's actually 3 points of origin. There's one kind of in here, there's one down here, and then there's one, it's a little bit faded out, but there's one that's going off in this direction as well. So there's 3 kind of different blurs going on in there. All right, so that's a good start. Let's go ahead and we're going to create some sparks. Now, if you watch the first episode where we did the Flame Nebula, I showed you how to set up a sparks brush. So if you have that saved, it's a good habit to save your brush presets as you go if you find one you like. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to go back to the one I have, but I'll show you the presets again just to have them here. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to set that blend mode to color dodge. I'm going to go to my foreground colors. I'm going to go ahead and choose a yellow, maybe something like that. So this RGB value is 255, 238, 94. I'm going to click OK. Select my brush tool, and I've already got that sparks brush still saved, so I have it down here. So let me show you the setup for that. Now I started with just a regular soft round brush, but I made some adjustments here. So the brush shape, I have the hardness, I turned that up to 30%. Spacing is turned on, and I have that turned up to 310%. Shape dynamics is also on, has size jitter around 80. Minimum diameter around 20, 25, something like that. Angle jitter 86 I have, but you know, somewhere between 80 and 90. These can fudge here and there, so you don't have to be precise or specific to what I have here. The roundness jitter was 73. Minimum roundness is 25, and flip X and flip Y jitter was checked on. Now scattering. Scattering, I have both axes as checked for scatter at 1000%. Count is 1, and count jitter is 20%. I also have transfer on to get some opacity effects in there. So I have opacity jitter set to 50%. Flow jitter, I have that at 40, and this should be on off. It's picking up my tablet. And that's all you need there. And then smoothing I have checked on. Usually smoothing is checked on by default. If not, go ahead and check that on. So let's go ahead and minimize this, and we're going to start with some larger kind of sparks, then we're going to do some smaller ones. So let's just kind of be very subtle about this and just kind of paint on a couple sparks here and there, nothing crazy just yet. Alright, now I'm going to right click, and I'm going to turn the size of this brush down to about half of it, so maybe around 15 pixels. And I'm going to do just a few more for some variety in here. Get that going. Alright, so let's create a new layer, and we're going to do kind of our debris look and feel. So I'm going to change this blend mode. I'm going to go ahead and change this to multiply. Or we'll probably use color burn. Let's use color burn this time around. So color burn, we want to set our foreground color to almost black. So for the RGB value, I'm going to choose 20, 20, 20, and click OK. And now we've got our brush tool selected. Let's go to your grunge brush, your kind of debris brush that we're going to use. So you want to make sure that your debris brush is selected in in your brushes here. It should be, if you loaded it, it should be towards the end of the presets you have in here. So mine I'm going to try to zoom in and see if there's a way hopefully on the screen you're seeing that I've zoomed in so you can see kind of the shape of this. It's just a dry brush shape, kind of an organic shape. And these are the settings I've got for it. So the brush itself, the tip shape, I have spacing on at 25%. I have shape dynamics turned on. It's almost the same as the scatter brush or the spark brush we created. So I have size jitter up to almost 90. Minimum diameter I've turned down to about 15%. Angle jitter is almost at 100. Roundness jitter is at 73. Minimum roundness is at 1%. And I'm going to go ahead and check on flip X and flip Y jitter. We also have scattering turned on. Now scattering, I have both axes checked at 800 and about 50%, so 848 is what I have, somewhere in that ballpark. Count at 1 and count jitter at 100%. All right, so you want transfer turned on as well. Transfer, I have the opacity jitter at almost 80%, it's at 78. Flow jitter is at 51. And then again, smoothing should be on, and that should be your setup for the debris brush. So now you're going to do a variety of kind of larger shapes and smaller shapes. So it really depends on what you want. Let me show you this again. So I have some pretty big ones, kind of these bigger shapes around here, and then I size the same brush down, and I have the smaller debris field kind of going on here, and I have different layers of the debris field, which you can do as well. So let's go ahead and draw on some of these debris objects. So I'm going to start with a bigger brush first and set those bigger ones. And you want to kind of go slow, because depending on what this brush does, you could get some areas you don't want. So I have it at about 200 pixels or 215. And right off the bat, that's kind of... Alright, so just kind of click and do a couple. And see where Photoshop randomizes it. Oh, that's a lot. You want to do kind of less of the bigger ones, and we're going to do more of the smaller ones. And I want the bigger ones kind of more on the outskirts than rather than in the blast. So now I'm going to right click, I'm going to turn my brush down. Let's try around 70 pixels for this one. And let's do a few more with smaller size. Kind of like that. And I think I want more on this bottom right hand, or the right hand side. Alright, now I'm going to turn my brush down again, this time to about 30 pixels. I'm going to do a few more. And you want to overlap them. You know, you want to get kind of these effects going here. And you can see the opacity kicking in. You can see that some brush areas have are more opaque than others. Some are more transparent than others. So I'm gonna bump this brush up big real quick and just see if I can get, there we go, maybe a couple larger shapes in here, maybe something like that. Something like that's getting there. All right, let's leave it for there for now. You can do this kind of a few times, do a few passes to get something you want. It's completely random, so sometimes Photoshop will do some interesting things. But if you just go slow and kind of click and Control Z to undo the stuff you don't like, you'll get there. All right, so let's create a new layer. And this time we're going to do a gradient map on top of this. So actually we don't need a new layer. Let's go ahead and I'm going to delete that layer. We need a new adjustment layer. So let's click the adjustment layer and select gradient map. All right. We're going to set the gradient map. We're going to go ahead and we'll turn the opacity down, but we'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and set the color map itself. So I'm going to click on that. And for this first color, I had kind of a blue, a darker blue chosen. So let's start with something around maybe here. So that's 47, 31, 118. And then for the next color, so let's click in here to create another color. And in here I had kind of a darker purple. So let's do something kind of like this. So that's 107, 19, 136. I'm going to click OK. Let's add another color. What did I have in here? I had kind of a yellow orange. So that I had, let's do 222, 163, 22, something around there. And then right before I get to the white at the end, I'm going to click another color, and this one I'm going to do a bright yellow. Alright, so for the bright yellow I have 255, 247, 180. So I'm going to click OK and OK again. Now let's turn the opacity down. Let's go probably somewhere around 60%. Let's do something like that. All right, so now we're getting some good color variation in there. All right, so we're going to do another sparks layer above this one. So let's create a new layer. Now go back to your sparks brush, and this is just to kind of give it some depth. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to grab my sparks brush. Hopefully you save that. If not, run back and you can set that back up. So I'm going to change this again to yellow for the foreground color. All right, and we're going to add some more in here. And let's go ahead and do some really bright yellow as well. So this is 255, 255, 226. And this is going to help do some more variation and get on top of our debris field. So you want that overlap essentially. And that's going to help give things some more depth. All right, so something like that. Now, let's do one more debris field. All right, new layer. Foreground color. I'm going to go ahead and choose almost black again. So this is 11, 11, 11. Click OK. Go back to my debris brush. All right, and I want, there we go, just a few more in here just to give it some contrast. There we go. That's a little too much. Something like that. So that's looking pretty cool. Okay, so now let's do a clouds layer above everything here. So a new layer. We want the default colors checked again. We want to come to filter, render, clouds. All right, we're going to set this to soft light. And we're going to turn the opacity down. This is just to kind of give it some atmosphere. Kind of like so. All right, now the last step we're going to do is another adjustment layer. Okay, and brightness, contrast. And we're going to choose use legacy. And we're going to kind of bump this contrast up a bit, and that's going to give us some real bright whites there. All right, and one thing you can do to kind of vary this up a little bit is select the mask that it creates itself. Make sure black is the foreground color, and go back to your debris brush and just start drawing in here again. And it's going to be very subtle, but it's going to start to darken some of the areas, so you get a shift in contrast, ever so subtle, but it makes a difference. All right, something like that. And that's really all there is to it. So let's kind of move this over. And when I did the original, I used a few different brushes for the debris brushes, so I used more than one. For this one, I also used more of a, for the gradient map, I threw some more red in there. So that's why I'm getting this red more on the left. There's some other effects going on in this one. There's this kind of swirl effect in the background and some other things going on. But for the most part, this is the same process that you would do to mimic something like this. So you can see our brushes here are more of a kind of a triangular shape, which gives it kind of a cool different effect. And we used more of the purple for the background and such. But there you go. That's a variation in how to set up this type of explosion effect. So there you have it. All right, I hope you got some enjoyment out of this video, and if you create anything like this, please tweet it at me on Twitter. I like to see what you guys come up with and see your work and how you implement these type of effects. If you're probably watching on the screen, I have the previous tutorial on here, which is the Northern Lights, or the Aurora Borealis, if I can say that. Radial radiance. So if you want to check that one out, that was the past one. We're going to do a couple more tutorials from Abstracts 3 and 4, and then also I just put Abstracts 5 and 6 up on the shop. 6 is pretty cool. I've been trying to figure out how to do that effect for some time. If you've seen the movie Oblivion and watched the end credits, It's how to mimic that topography effect. So I'll probably jump in and do that one, and then we might come back to more of the tutorial effects from Abstracts 4. So I really want to get that one out because it's pretty cool. So I'll do that one next from Abstract 6, and then we'll just get back into the swing of things and catch back up. So it's been about 20 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, feel free to like it if you would, if you could, if you do like it, or share it. Let your friends know if they can get some use out of it. And again, if you create this effect, show it to me. I like to check it out, and I will talk to you later. All right. Later.